A man doesn't fall in love with perfection. He falls in love with presence. In a world where everyone is trying to stand out, to be seen, to be better than the rest, presence is becoming rare. We live in times where people are so busy showcasing who they are online that they forget to show up in real life. And yet, the most magnetic thing a woman can ever offer is her undivided attention. When she looks at him, she isn't distracted by her phone, her thoughts, or her fears. She listens not to reply, but to understand. She doesn't try to fix, to control, or to manipulate. She simply is. And that simple act of being fully there, fully aware, and fully human makes a man feel something that success, money, or fame never could. Peace. Because in her silence he finds his calm. Presence is not about what you do, it's about how you are. It is the gentle energy that fills a room when you walk in without needing to demand attention. It's the comfort in knowing that you are not pretending to be someone else. It's the way your eyes meet his, and he feels you are not looking through him but into him. That connection doesn't come from words, it comes from energy. When a woman is truly present, she gives without giving anything material. She gives safety. She gives the assurance that he can let his guard down without being judged. In her presence, he doesn't have to be the strong one, the achiever, or the protector. He can simply be human. That, my friends, is the rarest kind of intimacy, the one that happens without touch, without words, but through soul. We often think attraction is about beauty or charm, but it isn't. Attraction fades when it has no emotional foundation. Presence builds that foundation brick by brick. It tells the other person, you matter enough for me to pause my world for a moment. In a society that celebrates being busy, presence is the most profound act of love. When a woman chooses to truly be with someone, she gives him something priceless, her time, her focus, her energy. That is the kind of connection that stays long after the conversation ends. Because it's not the memory of what she said that lingers. It's the feeling of how she made him feel. It's the warmth of being valued, not for what he brings to the table, but for who he is when the world isn't watching. Presence is healing. When a woman carries it, she becomes a mirror to a man's soul, reflecting back the parts of him he often hides from himself. Sometimes he doesn't even understand why her presence feels different, why he feels safe, grounded, and accepted when she's near. It's because she's not trying to fill the silence with noise. She's not performing. She's simply existing with him, side by side in that moment. That kind of connection teaches him that love doesn't have to be dramatic to be real. It doesn't have to be loud to be strong. Sometimes love whispers in quiet moments of stillness, and it's enough. It's in those moments that hearts begin to trust, slowly and deeply. To be present means to stop living in the what-ifs and whys of life. It means to look at the person in front of you and decide that, for this moment, nothing else matters. It's easy to get lost in your past, to fear your future, or to overthink your worth. But presence asks for surrender. It asks you to stop trying to be perfect and start being real. When a woman embraces her imperfections, her laughter, her silence, her flaws, she becomes alive in ways perfection never could. That aliveness is what touches hearts. It's what makes a man feel drawn to her energy, because she feels like home, not a performance. And when he's with her, he feels the permission to be imperfect too. We all crave connection, but true connection only exists where presence exists. You can't connect with someone who's not really there. You can't bond with someone who's half lost in their own head, half pretending to listen. But when a woman gives her full attention, she becomes magnetic without even trying. She radiates warmth, empathy, and understanding. And that energy speaks louder than beauty, louder than charm, louder than words. Men don't get addicted to how a woman looks, they get addicted to how they feel when they are with her. Because presence is not something you can fake. It's something you can feel. Presence is rare because it requires courage. It takes courage to put down your phone, silence your mind, and look someone in the eyes without fear. It takes courage to let yourself feel without running away. But that's what makes presence powerful. It demands authenticity. And authenticity is the language of the heart. When a woman chooses to be present, she chooses to love with awareness, to listen without defense, and to exist without needing control. That makes her unforgettable because in a world where everyone wants attention, she gives connection. And connection, my friends, is what the human heart is starving for. A present woman is not the loudest in the room, but she's the one who leaves a quiet impact. People might forget her words, but they remember her calm. They remember the way she made them feel seen, heard, and valued. That's why men become emotionally drawn to such women, because they offer something the world rarely does, a pause. A pause from pressure, from judgment, from expectation. In her presence, he can breathe. He can be soft. And that softness doesn't make him weak. It reminds him that he's still human. That's the magic of being present. It heals without trying. Presence is not taught, it is felt. You can't learn it from books or mimic it from others. It comes from being at peace with yourself first. You cannot offer stillness to another if your own soul is chaotic. That's why the most grounding women are those who have learned to sit with their own pain and not run from it. They've made peace with their storms. And when they walk into a room, they bring that peace with them. A man may not understand it logically, but he feels it emotionally. He feels lighter, calmer, safer, and that's why he stays. Not because she is perfect, but because she is present. Presence doesn't demand love, it invites it. It doesn't chase, it attracts. And it doesn't speak loudly. It whispers softly to the soul, saying, "You are safe here." That is why the most unforgettable women are not the ones who try to impress, but the ones who know how to simply be. They remind the world that love isn't found in grand gestures, but in quiet moments of understanding. They remind us that peace is not a place, it's a person. And that person is the one who knows how to be fully alive in every heartbeat, in every word, in every silence. Beauty can catch the eye, but it is resilience that captures the soul. In a world where appearance often takes center stage, it's easy to forget that the most magnetic kind of beauty is the one that cannot be seen. It's the one that can be felt. A woman who carries strength in her spirit, who has walked through storms and still chooses to smile, radiates a light that no makeup or fashion can imitate. Her beauty is not in the smoothness of her skin, but in the stories behind her scars. It's in the way she stands tall after being broken, in the calmness she carries after surviving chaos. That quiet strength is what makes a man feel something deeper than admiration. He feels awe. He sees in her the kind of courage that inspires, not intimidates. And that is where emotional attachment begins, when he realizes that her strength doesn't compete with his, it complements it. There is something profoundly attractive about a woman who has learned how to heal herself. She has cried in silence, fought battles no one knew about, and rebuilt herself from pieces others left behind. She no longer seeks validation, because she has already validated herself through pain and perseverance. That kind of emotional independence draws people in without effort. A man feels safe in her presence because she doesn't demand completion from him. She already stands complete within herself. Her strength doesn't come from being invincible, but from being real, real enough to admit she has been hurt, and brave enough to love again anyway. That courage speaks louder than perfection ever could. Her story becomes a mirror, reminding him of his own struggles and showing him that healing is possible. True emotional strength is not about pretending everything is fine. It's about finding light even when things aren't. The woman who can look at her scars and still see beauty in them carries a power that words cannot capture. Her laughter doesn't come from ignorance of pain but from victory over it. Every time she smiles, she silently tells the world, "You did not break me." And that kind of spirit touches something deep within a man's heart. He doesn't just see a woman, He sees a survivor, a warrior in disguise, someone who has mastered the art of transforming wounds into wisdom. Her resilience makes him reflect on his own fears and teaches him that strength is not hardness, it's softness that refuses to fade. In her strength, he finds comfort, and in her comfort, he finds connection. The modern world celebrates appearances, yet what truly stays with us is the energy someone carries. A physically beautiful woman may attract attention, but an emotionally strong woman holds attention. She doesn't rely on trends or external validation to define her worth. She walks with a sense of quiet confidence that doesn't need to shout to be heard. Her presence says, "I know who I am." That kind of self-assurance is rare. It commands respect and admiration effortlessly. Men are drawn to it not out of ego, but out of recognition. They recognize in her something they too aspire to be, grounded, centered, unshaken. Her strength is not a wall that keeps people out. It's a foundation that holds relationships steady. And that steadiness becomes irresistible. Strength in a woman is not about dominance. It's about grace under pressure. It's the way she handles disappointment without bitterness. The way she forgives without forgetting her worth. The way she keeps believing in love despite being let down. There's an elegance in her endurance that fascinates anyone who meets her. A man becomes emotionally addicted to that kind of woman because she doesn't love out of need. She loves out of choice. Her affection is never born from loneliness. It's born from abundance. That makes her love feel safe, stable, and pure. She has mastered the balance between independence and intimacy, between giving and protecting her peace. And that emotional balance is something the heart cannot help but fall for again and again. A strong woman does not use her strength to control others. She uses it to uplift them. When a man feels her presence, he feels lighter not because she carries his burdens for him, but because she reminds him that he can carry his own. Her encouragement doesn't come from pity, but from faith in his potential. She speaks life into him even when he doubts himself. She believes in him, not because she needs him, but because she sees something in him that he might have forgotten. That kind of belief is powerful. It awakens a sense of purpose. And that is what makes emotional connection grow, the feeling that someone genuinely sees the best in you and wants you to rise. Her strength becomes contagious. It makes him want to be stronger too. What many fail to realize is that emotional strength is deeply intertwined with compassion. A woman who has suffered deeply often becomes the kindest soul because she knows what pain feels like. She doesn't judge easily, and she doesn't dismiss emotions as weakness. Instead, she listens, she empathizes, she understands. Her strength is gentle, not forceful, nurturing, not overpowering. And that gentleness makes a man feel safe enough to open up, something he may have never done before. In a world that often tells men to suppress their feelings, her compassion becomes freedom. Through her strength, she gives him permission to feel, to be vulnerable, to be human. And once a man experiences that kind of emotional freedom, it's something he never forgets. Resilience gives birth to wisdom, and wisdom makes love deeper. A woman who has seen both darkness and light learns to love differently. She doesn't expect perfection. She values presence. She doesn't chase attention. She appreciates consistency. Her love is mature, patient, understanding, and peaceful. She no longer fears losing people because she knows she can survive even if she does. That inner peace radiates through her words, her eyes, her silence. It makes her magnetic because people crave that kind of calmness in a chaotic world. Her emotional strength becomes an anchor for those around her, and the man who experiences that steadiness feels drawn not just to her, but to the sense of home she creates without even trying. Her emotional strength also changes the way she handles love. She knows that love isn't about dependency, but about partnership. She doesn't expect someone to save her. She's already saved herself. but she welcomes someone who can walk beside her, not ahead or behind. That equality creates a kind of connection built on respect, not need. A man feels emotionally attached to her not because she fills his emptiness, but because she encourages his growth. She loves him in a way that challenges him to rise, not conform. That kind of love is rare. It's not built on fear of losing, but on freedom to grow. And freedom, when combined with love, creates the deepest bond imaginable. So, when we say emotional strength is more attractive than physical beauty, it's because strength cannot fade. Time may touch the face, but it cannot dim the fire within a strong woman's soul. Her eyes tell stories of survival, her voice carries the softness of forgiveness, and her heart beats with hope despite all it has endured. That strength is timeless. It doesn't just inspire admiration, it awakens devotion. Because when a man witnesses that kind of beauty, the kind that grows from the inside out, he doesn't just fall for her. He falls for the peace, the wisdom, and the courage she embodies. And that is the kind of love that doesn't fade, because it is rooted not in perfection, but in the enduring power of emotional strength. Vulnerability is not weakness, it is power. We live in a time where people wear masks to hide their pain, where emotions are seen as flaws, and where strength is often mistaken for silence. But true strength is not about never breaking. It is about having the courage to be open, even when the world expects you to be closed. A woman who can say, "I am not perfect, but I am real," carries a kind of courage that few can understand. Her vulnerability is not a cry for sympathy, it is a declaration of authenticity. It says, "This is who I am with my cracks, my fears, my hopes, and my dreams." And that kind of raw honesty touches something deep within a man's soul. Because in her truth, he finds permission to drop his own armor and simply be himself. Vulnerability has a rhythm soft, steady, and sincere. It doesn't rush to prove, it doesn't fight to be seen, it simply exists. When a woman allows herself to be vulnerable, she creates space for connection that cannot exist behind walls. A man doesn't get emotionally addicted because she is invincible. He gets attached because she is real. She lets him see the parts of her that the world never sees. The doubts, the insecurities, the quiet tears she hides from everyone else. And in doing so, she invites him into her truth. He sees her not as a perfect figure, but as a human being, fragile, brave, and deeply beautiful. That vulnerability becomes her strength because it allows him to connect beyond appearances, beyond pretenses, and beyond fear. A woman who embraces vulnerability teaches that there is no shame in feeling deeply. In a society that praises emotional numbness, she dares to feel everything: joy, sadness, love, and loss, and she does it with grace. Her ability to express what others suppress makes her magnetic. She doesn't bottle up emotions, she transforms them into empathy. And empathy is the bridge that connects hearts. A man becomes emotionally drawn to her because she listens without judgment, loves without fear, and accepts without condition. Her openness creates an atmosphere of safety where he can finally take off his mask. He realizes that he doesn't need to be perfect to be loved. He just needs to be present. And that realization changes everything for him. Vulnerability doesn't mean oversharing or losing control. It means being transparent with purpose. It's the quiet confidence to say, "I'm hurting," without apology, or "I need help," without guilt. It's the ability to express fear without letting fear define you. A woman who practices this kind of vulnerability doesn't chase validation because she has already made peace with her truth. She doesn't manipulate emotions. She owns them. Her openness is not a weakness to be exploited, but a mirror that reflects authenticity. When a man witnesses that level of emotional honesty, he feels seen, not by her words, but by her courage. It inspires him to face his own hidden emotions, the ones he has buried under years of pride. Her vulnerability becomes a spark that ignites healing in both of them. Vulnerability is the purest form of intimacy. Physical closeness can happen with anyone, but emotional closeness requires trust, and trust begins with openness. When a woman is unafraid to show her wounds, she gives him permission to reveal his own. And in that mutual unveiling, a bond is created that no pretense can match. It's in the late night conversations where masks fall, in the honest confessions that break the silence, and in the shared fears that lead to deeper love. Men don't get emotionally addicted because of constant perfection. They get attached because vulnerability feels like home. It is soft, real, and liberating. It tells him that he doesn't have to be a hero all the time, that he can rest, feel, and still be loved. That feeling is unforgettable. There's a quiet elegance in a woman who can be both strong and soft at once. Her vulnerability doesn't erase her strength, it amplifies it. Because it takes far more courage to say, "I'm scared," than to pretend you're not. It takes bravery to open up when the world tells you to close off. That delicate balance between power and tenderness is what makes her presence unforgettable. A man becomes drawn to her not because she has it all together, but because she doesn't pretend to. She makes imperfection look graceful, and that inspires him to stop hiding behind his own walls. Her authenticity makes her luminous in a way that beauty alone never could. Because vulnerability is truth, and truth is magnetic. When a woman dares to be vulnerable, she creates an energy that softens the hardest hearts. She doesn't lead with fear or pride, she leads with truth. Her openness disarms people because it's so rare to meet someone unfiltered, someone who doesn't need to wear armor to feel safe. A man who experiences that honesty feels something shift inside him. He starts craving that kind of emotional clarity, the kind that doesn't confuse love with control or silence with strength. Vulnerability teaches him that love is not about perfection, it's about acceptance. It's about holding space for another's truth without trying to fix it. That kind of connection becomes sacred, something that can't be replaced or replicated. It lives in the heart long after the moment passes. Many people fear vulnerability because they associate it with pain. But pain is not the enemy, numbness is. The woman who embraces her vulnerability has learned that feeling deeply is a form of strength. She knows that by opening herself to pain, she also opens herself to joy, healing, and growth. That openness becomes a kind of wisdom, an emotional intelligence that touches everyone she meets. When a man encounters that, he feels alive again. He begins to realize that emotions are not signs of weakness, but reminders that he is human. In her vulnerability, he rediscovers his own sensitivity, the part of him that the world told him to suppress. And slowly, her honesty heals what silence once wounded. Vulnerability also builds trust, not just between people, but within oneself. A woman who can be vulnerable has learned to trust her emotions, to believe that she can handle whatever comes her way. That inner confidence radiates outward, creating a sense of emotional safety. She doesn't use vulnerability as a weapon or a performance, she uses it as a bridge. A man becomes emotionally attached because he knows that with her, there is no pretending, no emotional guessing game. What she says, she feels. What she feels, she honors. Her openness invites authenticity in return, and that exchange, raw, unfiltered truth, becomes the foundation of something real. Vulnerability doesn't destroy relationships, it deepens them. A woman's vulnerability teaches that true power lies in being real, not in being perfect. Her ability to express without shame, to love without armor, and to feel without fear turns her into a force of nature. She doesn't hide behind emotional walls. She invites connection, and that invitation, so rare and so sincere, becomes irresistible. A man doesn't just fall for her smile or her beauty. He falls for the courage it takes to stay open in a world that constantly tries to close hearts. Her vulnerability makes her unforgettable because it shows him that being human, flawed, emotional, imperfect is not something to be ashamed of. It's something to be celebrated, something to be shared, something that makes life deeply, beautifully real. Every soul on this earth carries one silent desire to be seen, truly seen, not for what they do but for who they are. In a world that constantly measures worth through status, achievement, and appearance, being genuinely seen becomes a rare gift. A woman who looks beyond the surface, who sees a man's heart instead of his mask, becomes unforgettable. She listens not just to his words, but to what he doesn't say. She notices the flicker in his eyes when he's hiding pain, the hesitation in his voice when he's unsure, and the silence that speaks louder than his confidence. She doesn't see potential to fix. She sees a person to understand, and that simple act of seeing him without judgment or demand becomes the most powerful form of connection. Because to be seen is to feel known, and to feel known is to feel loved. Men spend most of their lives trying to be enough, strong enough, smart enough, successful enough. The world teaches them that emotions are weakness, and that validation must be earned through accomplishment. But when a woman enters his life who values his heart more than his resume, everything changes. She doesn't love him for the armor he wears. She loves him for the soul beneath it. She doesn't worship his victories. She appreciates his efforts. Her gaze doesn't seek perfection. It seeks truth. And when she looks at him with that kind of depth, he feels something unfamiliar: peace. Her presence tells him, you don't have to perform here. That moment of acceptance becomes the foundation of emotional addiction, because in her eyes, he rediscovers the freedom to simply be human again. There is something sacred about being seen beyond the surface. It's not about flattery or admiration. It's about recognition, soul recognizing soul. A woman who sees a man not through the lens of his mistakes or his achievements, but through his essence, gives him something priceless. She gives him permission to lay down his defenses. He doesn't need to hide his fears or edit his truth. She sees his insecurities, but she doesn't weaponize them. She hears his doubts, but she doesn't dismiss them. Her understanding becomes his safe place, her acceptance his refuge. He finds himself opening up in ways he never thought possible, not because she asks him to, but because her energy makes it safe to do so. And in that safety, love begins to bloom, not out of desire, but out of recognition. To be seen by someone who truly understands you is one of life's rarest gifts. It's not about being noticed in a crowded room. It's about being felt in a quiet moment. A woman who can look at a man and sense his unspoken emotions has a kind of emotional intelligence that captivates. She doesn't rush to fix him when he's broken. She sits beside him and reminds him that it's okay to feel. Her silence speaks compassion. Her presence speaks acceptance. In her company, he doesn't need to wear masks of strength. Her gaze tells him, you are enough, even in your vulnerability. And that message, repeated without words, begins to heal parts of him that applause and admiration never could. Because being seen is the beginning of being healed. Most men don't even realize how deeply they crave to be understood until they meet someone who actually does. They may have everything the world celebrates, success, respect, even love, yet still feel unseen. But when a woman listens to his soul, not just his stories, something inside him awakens. She doesn't love him for what he can provide, but for who he is when he has nothing to offer but truth. Her empathy is not forced, it's natural. Her curiosity about his inner world is sincere, and that sincerity makes him trust her in a way he's never trusted anyone before. He finds comfort in her awareness, the way she remembers small details about his dreams, his fears, his laughter. She doesn't just hear him, she feels him, and that feeling becomes the anchor he didn't know he needed. To be seen means to be accepted without condition. It means being loved not for what you give, but for what you are. A woman who can look at a man with eyes that say, I see you even in your flaws, becomes unforgettable. She doesn't walk away when he reveals his darkness. She lights a candle instead. Her compassion doesn't come from pity, but from understanding. She knows that every person carries battles invisible to the world, and she chooses kindness over criticism. That emotional maturity draws him closer, because it's rare to find someone who doesn't see brokenness as a burden. Her acceptance allows him to breathe again, to speak without fear, to feel without shame. And that comfort becomes a quiet addiction, not born of dependence, but of trust. When a woman truly sees a man, she reminds him of his own light. She becomes a mirror reflecting his goodness, his strength, his dreams that he had long forgotten. Through her eyes, he rediscovers parts of himself buried under doubt and duty. She doesn't make him feel small for his mistakes. She makes him believe in redemption. Her faith in him becomes his motivation. He begins to rise not because she demands it, but because she inspires it. Her presence awakens something sacred, the desire to become the best version of himself. That's the kind of connection that transforms lives. She doesn't complete him, she helps him meet himself again. And in that meeting, he realizes that love is not about finding someone new, but about remembering who you truly are. There's a reason why people never forget those who truly saw them. It's because being seen touches something eternal. A man may forget the compliments he's received, but he will never forget the woman who looked into his eyes and understood his silence. Her empathy leaves an imprint that time cannot erase. Because being seen makes him feel alive, it reminds him that he matters. It teaches him that his emotions are valid and his presence significant. That emotional acknowledgement becomes his home, a place he returns to in thought even when she's not there. It's not about obsession, it's about belonging. He becomes emotionally addicted because she doesn't just occupy his mind, she occupies his meaning. The act of seeing someone deeply is also an act of love that heals both giver and receiver. When a woman sees a man's truth, she also honors her own capacity to love without judgment. It takes courage to love someone for who they are, not who we want them to be. But when she does, love becomes pure, not transactional, not conditional, but soulful. Her understanding of him teaches her compassion, and his trust in her teaches him vulnerability. Together, they build a space where masks fall and souls meet. That's why emotional attachment rooted in being seen feels so profound, because it's mutual recognition. Two human beings finally saying to each other, "I see you, and I still choose you." That kind of love doesn't fade, it transforms. To see someone is to love without possession, to listen without interruption, to care without control. A woman who gives that kind of attention doesn't just touch his heart, she elevates it. Her love doesn't cage him, it frees him. She doesn't demand to be the center of his world, she helps him rediscover his own. Her presence whispers, "You are enough," and those words echo long after she's gone. Because the deepest emotional addiction is not born from desire or beauty, but from understanding. When someone sees the truth of who you are and still chooses to stay, that becomes the most powerful connection of all, one that transcends time, distance, and circumstance.